Most of the time, you're going to want to automatically add all of your modified files for your next commit. But there are times when you might want to check to see what's been changed before you make your commit. For example, maybe you're working with a team member and you're not exactly sure what has changed, or maybe you've been working for a couple of days and you're not sure whether you made a change to a file or not. Well, to do that, I can just come right back into Terminal. You'll notice I'm picking up right where we left off in the last exercise. I'm inside the Git Basics folder, and what I can do is type in git diff, D-I-F-F. And when I hit return, I love this about Git. So what this does is it's going to say, okay, if I go inside the index file, it'll show you the changes in two ways, the A and then the B. So minus, minus, and then plus, plus, plus. It'll take you to the line where the code is. It'll go through the code for a little bit just to give you your bearings in terms of where you are. And then it'll show you the two versions of this. The older version is the one with the minus symbol on it, the A one, the one that's shown the first. And the change is the B one, which is the plus symbol. And so very quickly, I could look at that change and go, oh, that's right, I updated the scripts directory. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Now, git diff only worked because the file is unstaged, meaning it's been changed and modified, but we haven't added it yet. Notice what happens when we do that. If I typed in git add and then index.html, it's going to add it. So if I do git status now, you can see that we do have changes that have been staged to be committed in our next commit. But now if I do git diff, nothing happens. And that's because when we just run the git diff command with no arguments passed to it, it looks for any files that are unstaged to get the differences between them. So once a file has been staged, if you still need to track the difference, you can do that too. You can type in git diff -- staged, and it'll show you exactly what the change is. So I'm going to commit that because I like this. I'm going to type in git commit -m, and then in quotation marks, updated path for respond.js. Again, I want to be really descriptive when I do that so that when I look at that, there's no questioning in my mind about what that commit represents or the changes that were made in that commit. So if I hit return, now it's done that. And if I type in git status, everything's good to go. Now, I'll be honest with you, I gave you a pretty easy example of a difference between a file. I mean, it was just one line, right? Imagine if you've worked on, say, 50 lines of code. And this is really hard to kind of pick and choose through the terminal window. It's kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to comb through it. So you can, in the global config file, actually set up an editor to compare the differences in. There are a lot of different editors that people have created out there for comparing text files together. And so you could download one of those and then in your git config file, point to that. And then when you run the difference command, it'll execute that instead, which can make life a little bit easier for you. So if you're going to go hardcore on Git and be using it just from the terminal window, I might recommend checking out in the Git help file how to set that up. Okay, so now you have a good idea of how to initialize a Git repo. We can check the current state of our repository. We now know how to stage files, and we now know how to make commits. Now, those basic commands are going to form the bulk of your GitHub workflow. So it's important that you're comfortable with the concepts and terminology we've covered so far. So if there's anything that we've covered that you haven't quite understood, go back and watch those movies over again, do the exercise files over again. And the more you do it, the more repetition you get, the more you'll understand those concepts.